Hey guys. So before we get into the actual training, I thought it would be helpful to kind of give you a little backstory and context on kind of how I got here to where we are today. Originally, I'm a kid from Texas. I grew up in the 80s, really aware of music and how it affected myself growing up. Loved guitar players, loved great production, loved the experiences that music kind of created. I grew up playing in bands, recording music, writing songs, and I was that kid skipping school. I'd go to see Pat Metheny or Van Halen or Stevie Ray Vaughan and spend time with them backstage. So that was kind of the nerd origin story for myself. And there were really two tracks that really set my journey in place. The first was hearing Van Halen 1 for the first time, and it was a visceral moment where I knew, yes, guitar playing is amazing, but it's more about the kinetic transportation, if you will, of how music can kind of bring people into new experiences. So hearing Van Halen 1 was really important for me. The second track was in the early 80s receiving one of the early Macs that came out. Not knowing it at the time, but that path of technology and how that intersects with music, those were kind of my two rails. So those were really special to me. Those, the Mac and Van Halen, that's kind of summarizes what I love and what excites me. After, studying and teaching in Texas, I was fortunate to attend Belmont University in the early 90s. This was, I guess, after Trish Yearwood was there, and while I was there, Brad Paisley was there, and so it was a great time. We got to just deep dive into music production and guitar and the music business side of it. It was a really great era for music. Garth was just happening, and I remember him coming into Corner Music where I taught, and bless his heart, he was going out on tour, and he said, I need like 10 Takamine guitars, and he paid for all of them. And then he didn't know it at the time, but Takamine, would pay for his guitars, and they said, okay, yeah, just credit his credit card back, and we'll pay for Garth Brooks Takamine's. It was kind of funny. Then I was fortunate to have an opportunity to go on tour of Europe. I was teaching at Corner Music at the time, and the artist came in and he hired me and kind of my band to go to Europe. Jace Everett, Jace Beasley at the time came with us. And so I got to go to Monaco and France and Switzerland and Italy, and it was kind of a paid vacation, right? You're in your 20s, you're touring the world. It's like, this is awesome. And I kind of used that tour as a way to pay for a hard drive. Back then, 94-ish, hard drives were really expensive. And I wanted a hard drive because I didn't have a hard drive you can record on, right? So I was kind of putting all the money away to pay for the hard drive. And it's kind of funny. Usually your class graduates together and you do the cap and gown thing. I actually wasn't able to walk with my class because we were in Geneva, playing in Geneva that night. So I wasn't able to walk, but that's okay. I got to go and have some fun there. And that was it was a great time in my life. And after, 2-3 years of touring, I kind of got bored with just living in a bus or an airport and being creative 2 hours a night. I wanted to be more productive, like 10 hours a day or even 8 hours a day. So right about then, I reconnected with a mentor friend of mine, Randy Cox, who was a publisher at Sony ATV Tree, and I started writing and producing for him. And he gave me a ton of rope. I would write the song, I'd produce the song, I'd hire the vocalists and the players, and turn in the invoice at the end of the week, and wrote a ton of songs, many of which were not great. Most of which, the first 150 or so, were not great. And I just really got to learn from him and be around people who were just light years ahead of where I was, writers, producers. It was a fantastic learning time and a great relationship. I'll always be grateful to Randy for giving me more rope than I would have given me, And then that eventually turned into a production company. So instead of just writing blindly, trying to hit a moving target, we were writing for one record, the artist we were producing. And every 3 months would, produce a new record, would write the record, produce it and mix it. And every 3 months it was a new artist. And we did that for about 10 years. And early on in our production company, I realized that great records need great songs. So we started a publishing company, had writers writing for the artists we were producing, and it was a really productive, prolific time, that 10 or 11 years. We upstreamed some artists to Warner Brothers and Sony. And then in 2012, we were kind of surprised to hear that we had won an American Music Award for a song I wrote and produced for a super good friend of mine, Mo Logren. And she performed on the AMAs and did the whole thing. And then that kind of morphed into a joint venture with Garth Brooks' company, where we were just writing and producing, kept on writing and producing. We won some awards, had a song nominated for Song of the Year and Video of the Year. Then about that time, we started getting requests for a catalog for film and TV stuff. And that turned into what is now the Sync Center. But it was a business unit based around sync, music supervision, and clearance. We had friends from BMI that would ask us to help their clients, and that kind of was the catalyst for the Sync Center there. We eventually spun that out as the Sync Center. So with our label and publishing and supervision units, we just learned a ton. I took good notes and was really fortunate to be in the room with people like Bob Doyle and Randy Cox, who, just had tons more insight and understanding than I did. So after multiple mentors, life lessons, successes, and tons of failure, we started a training company based around education, training, and support. And this was eventually titled Hacking Music. It was a book that is kind of the basis for everything we teach. And we were fortunate to launch it at Harvard University some years ago. And that's really become the heart and center of how we work with artists. It's a collection of what works, right? So today we're doing the same thing, training artists, working with our business units at the Sync Center, Jetpack Label Group, and Artist Works. And we're just really fortunate, really grateful. We recently moved out to a farm west of Nashville where we spend our days chasing our kid, Sam, around and having a great time and helping kind of the next generation of artists do their thing. So that's a kind of a quick overview of kind of how I got here in my story. But I just wanted to share some of that with you to give you an idea. Like, look, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Trust me. All right, great. So let's go into the next training video.